Come closer, child. Scoot in here by the fire. Don't be shy. The fire's warm. It's cold out. Move over, everyone. There's a child here. Just like that. Put your hands up by the barrel and spread your fingers. Now you're doing it. You'll be warm in no time. Do you know the story of how we got here, child? How things ended up this way? Why you're all alone and we're gathered here like a pack of dogs around burning garbage? Or maybe why your parents aren't here? Quiet, everyone. The child needs to know. Get closer to the fire, child. Get warmed up and I'll tell you the story. And I'll thank the rest of y'all to be quiet. I used to be a mother myself. I had 2 boys, twins. They had giant heads and tiny eyes that were too close. They spent their days slobbering and drooling, and you wouldn't believe the gas that came out of those behinds. Thick like old milk and twice as rancid. The top of their shirts was stained where their chunky burps would drip down. The shit twins, everyone used to call them on account of the way they'd fill their pants with their sinful human mud. It dripped down their ankles into their shoes. I always knew where they'd been. I just need to follow the trail of their mess. 2 of the sweetest angels I met, births from my own cozy womb. I had a husband, too. His name was Gregory. He was as strong as a farm dog and just as smart. God bless his soul. When he was 17, he and Richard Chumchunk got in a fist fight in a church parking lot over rumors that Gregory tried to know Richard's dog in the biblical sense. Richard, well, he didn't take too kindly to this, and I can't blame him. I won't defend Gregory's appetites. So Richard took a big old rock and slammed Gregory upside the head. Smashed his brains in so that the right side of his brain was pushed into the left. The congregation gathered around him in the parking lot, laughed and laughed, and goddamn if I don't chuckle myself thinking about it. Gregory fell to the asphalt like a sack of potatoes and twitched like a bug on his back, mouth foaming and whatnot. He let all his brown stink right out of his greasy hole, and there it pooled in his shorts like a rain puddle. He couldn't talk after that. Not a word. And his little brown was as reliable as a one-wheeled bicycle. That man stank to the clouds, but I loved him all the same. We lived a happy, quiet life, like any normal family. At night, we'd play games like Sniff the Boy, Choke on Your Fist, Yell at the Dog, and my favorite, Gather the Goo. Lord knows enough goo fell out of those boys. I'd have to climb after them on my hands and knees day and night, sweeping and mopping up their messes. I still miss it from time to time. Sometimes I can smell their sin under my fingernails. Take a sniff. But then this country started to change. People's bank accounts dried up like piss in the sun. Grocery stores had naked shelves, and skinny dogs roamed the carless streets looking for any old boy to bite. We'd eat dog and beans right out of the can, and then the boys would fight over which of them got to eat the can. They'd suck it right down like a billy goat. God bless them. The country was looking for someone to blame, and no one knew where to point the finger. All sorts of crazy politicians took to the radio, blaming the downturn on this, that, or the other thing. But one stood out above the rest. He blamed the stink stinks. The stink stinks. The ones with shits and the stinks and the chunky burps. We didn't think twice about it at first, but then public opinion began to sway. You'd see more and more people protesting in the streets with "Clean up the grease" and "Mop up the shits" painted on signs and printed on shirts. They held in their shits for days, for weeks, for months. It came to pass that no one took shits anymore. It filled them with a terrible violence. All that gas and chunky burps trying to escape, transforming from waste into hate. We stayed out of it. My family made their mess in the home, and I cleaned up after them best I could, day and night. I'd have to spray them with a hose out back to wipe off their stinky stinks, but I couldn't keep up. They shat like horses in a stall, up to their knees in that stinky, greasy goo. I kept on shitting like a lady, but kept it to myself. I was nowhere near the level of a stink, but goddamn if I didn't have to light a match every now and then. The stinks fought back. They met the shitholders in public parks and at rallies, a trail of shits and stinks following them like a slug. The Trail of Freedom, I used to call it. At first it was peaceful, then it was choppy, and then it got violent. The stinks had an advantage at first. When they'd flee, the shitholders would slip on a trail and writhe in the waist like frogs in heat. It even looked like the stinks had the upper hand for a while. But then a state of emergency was called and the shitholders' National Guard was deployed. Once 20 soldiers drowned in the stink during the crisis of stink in 1996, they finally declared war. The shit-stink war started. The stinks didn't have a chance. They fought back, hurling their shits and stinks, but were outmatched. The soldiers wised up quick. They'd shower between fights and take antibiotics so the shit wouldn't fester in their veins. Shitholder scientists learned how to turn compacted shit into energy so the shitholders would absorb their own shit like eating food. They burped in private, no doubt. Then the government deployed soldiers with soap guns and self-cleaning diapers. Police were stationed at every corner with sanitary bibs to catch and clean the burps. The medical corps of the shitholders sewed everyone's little beeholes tight so the stink wouldn't leak. It took about 3 years until almost all the shits and burps were cleaned up. The few stinks left went underground, plotting and planning. My boys got cleaned. They were put on a strict anti-acid regimen, and within days their burps stopped. The self-cleaning diapers were awful effective, and combined with the surgeries, their little stinks cleaned up. Then, Gregory. Poor Gregory. They put his smashed-up brain back together, and afterward he didn't mess like he used to. He even learned to talk again and had a high-pitched voice like a strangled sparrow. Then his dirty appetites returned. He'd roam the streets at night looking for a dog to make an honest woman out of. He wasn't the man I married, and I hardly recognized my freshly clean boys. Came to head on a Wednesday night. I remember it crystal clear. Came home from church, and when I opened the door, the house was clean as a priest's tight little sin chute. There were no goo trails, no shits in corners, no walls stained with chunky burps. Gregory was nowhere to be seen. I'm prowling the streets, probably, and the boys were upstairs sleeping away in their beds without a greasy cloud of stink hovering above them. It wasn't my family anymore. I left that night without a note. I think about them every day. I went into the sewers and joined what was left of the stinks. The smell of shits and stinks brought back happy memories. I made a home there. I can't give many details or betray any names, but we plotted to turn the tide and hatched a scheme against the shitholders. After months of meetings peppered with chunky burps and heavy gas, we were ready. The stinks followed the sewers that led them right to the shitholders' power grid. We aimed to knock it out. The stinks decided to beat the enemy at their own game. See, they held in their shits and burps for weeks. And when we were below the grid, we climbed right up and moved the manhole cover. One by one, the stinks went over the top. They burped right through the fence, gathered in a circle, and unleashed the greasy waste they'd been holding in for weeks. It flooded the building and drowned the guards. Slowly, all the shit stripped down into the basement, into the transformers. The heavy grease in the pool of stinks short-circuited the power plant, and the lights went out. The country went dark. Then the world. Cities crumbled. Infrastructure imploded. Sewers were overrun with stink. Computer systems went haywire. Missiles got fired across the world from all nations, clearing out almost all of humanity. We won at a heavy cost, but now, child, we stink freely, pants filled with our own brown sins. Now we're here, gathered around this fire, the few of us who are left. No one knows for sure how many survivors there are, but we're here. And you're here, and that's what matters. That's how it happened. Push yourself up closer to the fire, child. Get warm. We're in for a long night. Tell me, child, what's your name? Child? What was that? Was that a chunky burp? Oh, Lord, your shirt is stained. Good gracious, I haven't met a stink like you in years. Give me your hands. Sweet Jesus, there it is. On your palms and feet, you got the stigmata of waste. Is it you? Are you here to save us? Tell me, child, are you the Christ child?
This story must be